Okay. So if we can factor, we will factor. So is x squared plus 7x plus 12 factorable? Let's check. 1 and 1. What do you think we'll use for 12? Product of two numbers. 4, 3. Yep. Diagonals allowed to 7. A plus 4 and a plus 3. Put in our x's. So x plus 4 times x plus 3 equals 0. Meaning our solutions would be -4 and -3. So if it's factorable, we're going to factor. Let's try the next one. Is this one factorable? 2, 3. Okay. Now, we're going to multiply to a negative, meaning one number is positive, one number is negative. What do you want to try? 4, 3? Does it matter which way? Yes, it does. 3 and 4, let's try this. This gives me 8 and 9. Ooh. Which one has to be negative? The 9, meaning -3, +4. Let's put in our x's. So our product would be 2x minus 3 times 3x plus 4 equals 0. Or our solutions would be, what would be the first? Positive, opposite sign, 3 constant over the coefficient, 3 over 2. Comma, or opposite sign is negative, second over first, 4 over 3. Now, if you're having a hard time understanding how we're getting those, what we're really doing is we're taking 2x minus 3 and setting it to 0 and solving for x. Add 3, divide by 2, right? X is 3 over 2. Same thing with the other one, 3x plus 4, set it equal to 0, subtract 4, and divide by 3. So if you could just look at it and get those numbers a lot quicker, right, than doing all that math. Yeah? Why didn't I use -4 and -3? Oh, okay, so we're really thinking, we're asking what value of x would make that factor equal to 0? Because we want a product where one of them is 0 so that they multiply to 0. So x plus 4 has to equal to 0. -4, right? Minus 4. Same thing, x plus 3 could equal, what would make it 0? Subtract 3, x equals -3. Okay, so that's why it's the opposite sign. All right, the next guy. Is this one factorable? Let's try. I kind of give it away. 2, 1, let's try. 5 and 1. Okay, 2 and 5. Can we make that add to 8? No. Try something else. Let's try switching the numbers to 1 and 5. 10 and 1. No. So, is it possible? No, not possible. So, in this type of problem, we have two options. So, when it's not factorable, we can either do one of two things. So, method 1, we did yesterday. What was that? Solve by completing the square. You didn't like it? Then you might like method 2. Method 2 is quadratic formula. Yay! The quadratic formula, which is, okay, there's different ways we can sing it. Has anyone ever heard the song Pop Goes the Weasel? Seriously? Thank you. Right? Oh. Okay. X equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus square ac all over 2a. Okay, so if you knew Pop Goes the Weasel, that would actually mean something to you. Because you guys are clearly out of touch with like great hits, like Pop Goes the Weasel, you might identify with things like One Direction. Okay, so there's two different videos I have for you. The first one I discovered this morning. I did my usual Google of Quadratic Formula song, and there's a new version out. Yep, and the new version is One Direction. Yeah. So we're going to start with that one. And
the first thing about the quadratic formula is what we're actually doing. The first part is add a quadratic function. A squared plus bx plus 0. We have a quadratic function set equal to 0. We're using the quadratic function of negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared x or ac all over 2a to find where the function crosses the x-axis or the function is equal to 0. So there's a tune that knows by One Direction that we will use to memorize this formula. Okay? John was a similar tune. Get out,
you know the song? Painful? I don't even know the song.
Good.
Okay.
So if we use that same chorus, we can sing the quadratic formula.
I wrecked it. Sorry.
So that's how it goes. Let's do it one more time.
Okay, one more time. We're going to sing along this time. Okay. You got this.
Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared
Minus
AC all over 2a. Now you know the quadratic formula. Now you know the quadratic formula.
Okay, so that's the one version. I discovered that this. Okay, whoa. I don't even know what that was. I have to watch the videos before I show them to you because what if something's on there and I lose my job? Okay, this is the other version. It's a little bit morbid, so it kind of goes with the Halloween theme. Okay.
I don't understand, and I've been having trouble. This problem's all my fears. So I took out my notebook and I wiped away his tears with the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula. Quadratic formula.
Never.
The quadratic formula. And it's negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. Did I plug in the coefficients? Yep, you bet your ass me. If I could explain it, this problem's down the drain. That's exactly when he stuck a knife into my brain. quadratic formula. Quadratic formula. And it is negative b plus or minus square root of 2 squared minus 4ac over 2ab over 2ab over 2ab.
Okay. Do you want me to stop this one? Keep going. Give me my tombstone.
Quadratic formula. Quadratic formula. Quadratic formula. Quadratic formula.
Are you singing? I stopped it to see if I could hear some singing. Okay, ready? And it's negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over You can't hear me, I'm hoping. Okay, that's it. Alright, I don't know what you like better. The first one, I feel like... I don't know what you're talking about. Do the quad song?
These quadratic equations are really burning my wall.
Okay, we really do have to do math too.
How do I read these things?
Maybe this will help.
Mr. Bill!
I don't get it.
Everybody listen, pay attention, class. We're about to solve quads so that y'all can pass. We'll teach you 3 methods. X is what we're after. Start off first, why don't you teach me how to factor? That's a class, there's a fact that won't work for you. We'll go down on this. We'll break it down into 2 quantities. That linear factor, we solve them with ease. The zero product property comes into effect. You think you equal 0, and then you solve for x high. There's a shortcut, speed is what you want. The eye little back, divided by the front, and eventually any part of a greatest common factor. Answer to the feature, 0 believe I'm a doctor. Mixing math with music, we help the students learn. Keep your minds open, this class is outdone.
It's pretty good, eh? That's like hard.
The factor in it, how I fix it. We did it and send it, but the times of factors just don't let it. But don't you worry, we got another way to solve it. Go with the square, baby, that's
that's the way that I resolve it. And with me in my face, and you'll convince will not diminish. You can listen by my boy, he will get you to the finish. Quadratic, you can get your from behind the note. Did right, everything by eight. You know that is how I roll. See to the other side, girl, see it, square it, add this to both sides. Not only your perfect square, you just have to recognize this is simplified when you go around the line. Yeah, stand tall, we hold it to cross solve. All I do is solve, I get it, and I can solve them all. My boys don't finish that, he be prime time. That's how we teach it well, mixing in the seal lines. It is here to make your day. Put life into the dance, cause this is the third way. Better take out your count, cause some of these be insane. You gotta plug and chug, and soon you'll make it rain. First you find and you now plug them in, put parentheses around on them. Fix up that discriminant sitting in the back on them. It'll be imaginary or so real on them. Class going bananas, I get it figured out on them. Plus or minus this, to the opposite of B on them. Without the top on 5 to 8 on them. Time to start the class, about to give this task to them. Yeah, thumbs up, we gonna show them how to do it. Do the problem solve, it ain't really nothing to it. School, where we like to do the dance. Next to the left, it's a bit.
Maybe I should start. Maybe I should. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was. Yeah. I should have paused it. Oh well. It is what it is. Okay. That took way longer than I expected. Next time I'm not listening to you guys. Okay. So let's talk about using the quadratic formula. Okay. So let's just skip this. It's hit number 3. So if it's not factorable, we want to use the quadratic formula to solve. Okay? And we can either complete the square or we can use quadratic formula. The key is to know what A is, B is, and C is. So looking at this, what would our A value be? 2. B is, careful of sign, would be actually negative 4 because we're comparing it to ax squared plus bx plus c. And so if we have a minus 4x, b is negative 4, and c is negative 3. So when we plug it into the formula, always use brackets when you sub. Okay? I tend to always remember pop goes the weasel. X equals negative b plus or minus square root. I don't know that One Direction song. So you'll have to sing it for me. It's pretty bad. It's pretty good. Gotta love that one. Yeah, I know you love One Direction. Don't lie. I know you do. Okay, so when we're plugging in the negative b, you want to put negative and then brackets and then sub in your b value. What's your b value? Negative 4. You really have to be careful with signs because here we have a negative 4. This negative of the b. Plus or minus the square root of our b squared minus 4. A is 2 and c is negative 3. All over 2a. 2a. Okay, all over 2a. Yeah, I should be in a choir. I know. Missed my calling. Okay, so let's simplify this. Now you could plug this all into your calculator, especially if it's asking to the nearest hundredth. If you were to put this in your calculator right now, you'd have to be very careful of brackets. Some of you have a feature on your calculator where you can choose numerator denominator. If you have the colored fancy ones, you know who you are, showing us up. Okay? Otherwise, if I were to sub this in right now and just want to get my decimal, I would put in, well, negative 4 actually is positive 4. Agreed? then I'd have to do the plus version. There's going to be two answers. It could be a plus or minus. So I'll do the plus. Square root of -4 squared. I'll put that in brackets because when you square a negative, it's actually going to come out positive. If you didn't have those brackets, then you'd have a negative answer there. -4 times my a value times my c. Then get out of your square root. And then I'd have to close my numerator. Divided by denominator, open it up. 2 times 2, close it up. Okay, so try plugging that in. The positive version, you should get 2.58 if you plug this in now. Now, you might want to simplify it first, because is it easy to make a mistake with that? Sure is. Sure is. So just see if you get, I did the 4 plus, not the minus version, for the 4 plus. See if you get the same thing as 2.58. Not at all? You get non-real. Okay, something happened inside your brackets when you're doing the square root. It came out as a negative some reason. So make sure you have the negative 4 is squared. -4 times 2 times -3. Okay, so -4 squared has to be in brackets. -4 times 2 times -3. Close the bracket for the numerator. Now, if you have the type of calculator that you don't push the arrow and you just use all these brackets, right, you would have to close a bracket for your square root and then also close the bracket for the numerator. Okay, now, who's not getting 2.58? Okay, right, it's easy to make a mistake. So it's much simpler if we simplify this first a little bit. Okay, so -4 comes out as +4 plus or minus. Let's figure out what's inside our brackets. Okay, so we're going to type in instead just the -4 squared. And that's actually called our discriminant, the inside of the square root, which we'll talk about more in a bit. I'm so sorry we did all those songs. That took way too long. So you get 40. So you get 16, and then -4 times 2 times -3, that becomes +24. Because 4 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24, and the two negatives become a positive. So we have 16 plus 24, or 40. Would you agree? All over 4. So if I wanted this to the nearest hundredth in your calculator, let's see if you're more likely to get that correct. So brackets for the numerator. Let's do the plus version. 4 plus root 40. And then close your numerator, close your square root, divided by 4. You get 2.58 this time. Yeah, we're good. Okay, so you're more likely to get a correct answer if you simplify the inside there first. You don't have to. To get the other version, just go second, enter, and then change your one side. Okay, so if I ask for the nearest hundredth, it would be 2.58 and -0.58. So that's if I asked for a rounded answer. What if I wanted the exact? Okay, then we have to simplify this more. How can we simplify it? Square root 40. What perfect square goes into 40? 4 times 10. So we can break that into 4 times 10. And if we're breaking it into 4 times 10, that's equivalent to 2 root 10. So root 40 is equivalent to, now we have one more step. And that is, we can actually take out a common factor here. All the coefficients, or all the constants, can you divide them all by? 2, and it has to be to all 3. So we can divide these all by 2. It has to be to everybody. And so our final answer then would be 2 plus or minus root 10 all over 2. So that would be fully simplified. Now we could get the same thing by completing the square. It might look a little different. It might look like 1 plus or minus a half root 10. It would be the same thing though. Okay, so we can get our answer by completing the square or quadratic formula. Let's turn the page and try another one. Quadratic formula. Okay, so notice how it's going to give us our two possible roots because it has plus or minus in the formula. So we have our plus and we have our minus. We have to type it in our calculator twice to get the two different roots. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is I want you to practice using the quadratic formula, and I want you to solve both of these, and we're going to round it to the nearest 10th. Okay? So we have to make sure it's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Is the first one in that form? Yes. Okay. What's our a value? 1. What's our b? 2. And our c? Negative 1. A, B, C. Okay. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Hey, that's messy. Really helps if you write the formula down first before you sub so that you know you're subbing incorrectly, and use brackets. So negative bracket, what's your b value? Is what? 2. So you want to go straight to changing it to the proper sign right away. That's fine, but just be careful of that negative b. That's where students make a mistake. B squared, so 2 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 1, all over 2 times 1. So what I'd recommend, if you're going to just try, we're just want to punch this in our calculator, I'd recommend simplifying your what's inside the square root. We can do this one in our head. 2 squared is 4. Negative 4 times 1 times negative 1 is actually plus 4. So 4 plus 4? 8. Could you use your calculator? Sure. You don't have to though. So we have negative 2 plus or minus root 8 all over 2. So type that in your calculator, answer to the nearest 10th. So you have the positive version and the negative version. Now I'll type in the full thing, show you can do that, but you have to be very careful. Now, your numerator has to be in brackets, unless you do it in 2 separate steps. Negative 2 plus root 8 all divided by 2. And then go second enter and change it to negative 2 minus root 8. Make sure you use minus and not a negative. Oh, if I wanted you, if I said as an exact value, so answer with as an exact, then you would. I wouldn't if we're just asking to the nearest 10th, only because what if I make a mistake simplifying, right? You could if you want to, because you're right, it is simplify. You can simplify it. So did you get 0.4 and negative 2.4? Rounded. Yeah. Okay, try the last one. Make sure it's in the proper form, and then use the quadratic formula. Now you're welcome to type that all into your calculator at once, but you might want to just figure out what is negative 12 squared minus 4 times 15. Oh, minus 15. Right? Yeah. So when you plug that in, do you get 200 and 384? Yes. Okay, so you're less likely to make a mistake if you did that. That inside of your the inside of the radical is called the discriminant. Because if it comes out negative, can you square root of negative? No. And so if you ever get a negative inside, what that means is that there's no zeros, because we can have quadratics that have no x-intercepts. And so if you ever plug it in the quadratic formula and you get a negative inside the square root, you know that there's no zeros, no solution, no x-intercepts. You can also have where the discriminant, the inside is equal to 0. And if the inside equals to 0, you get plus or minus root 0. Or just plus or minus 0. Meaning there's only going to be one x-intercept. So that's the case where you have one x-intercept. Okay, so we either can have no x-intercepts, one x-intercept, or two x-intercepts. Remember that? Yeah. Negative 12, yeah. So then, so it's a negative 12, right, is your b value, but the formula has negative b. So a negative 12 comes out as positive 12. Right? So if I sub it in, I didn't show it properly, sorry. You're actually subbing in, negative is the formula, and then negative 12. And the two negatives give you the positive 12. Okay, to the nearest tenth, what do you get? 3.9 and negative 0.9? What?
Question. I got the same things, but I just made the 4 negative instead of equal sign.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so all your signs were opposite. So if you moved it to the other side, it was negative 4x squared plus 12x plus 15. It'll work out the exact same. Yeah. Okay, so all we need to do now is 2 more examples, but this time we're going to simplify the radicals instead of actually getting to the nearest tenth. Okay, so let's try this guy. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, we'll play the song at the end too, just for fun. Okay, negative, what's my b value? Negative 3. So if you're careful enough, you can just go 3. Plus or minus the square root, b squared, so negative 3 squared. This is why I use brackets when I sub. Minus 4 times our a value is 2, our c value, negative 4, all over 2 times a, 2 times 2. Okay, this is where we get to have some fun. We still need to figure out what's inside our square root. So negative 3 squared is 9. Negative 4 times 2 times negative 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 2, 32. So 32 plus 9, 41. Okay, can you simplify 41? No, there's no perfect square. So is it fully simplified? Yes, that one's fully simplified. Let's try D. Do you want to try D on your own? Okay, you try. All by myself. Don't wanna be. X equals 12 plus or minus. Now, when you plug in negative 12 squared minus 4 times 3 times 11, what do you get inside your brackets? 12? Yeah? Okay, can you simplify root 12? Yes. 4 times 3. So that actually equals, or you can think of it as root 4 times root 3, which is 2 root 3 all over 6. Can that be simplified further? Yes, we only divide if all 3 can reduce. All 3 have to. We can reduce all 3 constants by 2. Yeah, so that gives us 6 plus or minus 1 root 3, so just write root 3 all over 3. Okay, well, turn the page. We have to do something really quick. Quick. Okay, the nature of the roots. So what I was just talking about, remember how we can have 1 x-intercept, 2 x-intercepts, or 0 x-intercepts? If I use the quadratic to solve 3x squared minus 2x minus 5, I would get 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared, 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. Okay, so what happens in this case is I'm getting 4. Well, this one had 2 solutions. This is boring. Can you do me a favor? Can you make this a plus 5? It only changes one thing. Plus 5. Okay, so what happens here? Well, I get 4 minus, what's 4 times 3 times 5? 60? Yeah, it's 60, and 4 minus 60 is negative 56. Is that possible? Not possible. You cannot square root a negative. That's an imaginary answer. Yes. Changing. Oh no, to make it easier? No, you can't change your signs just to make it easier on your written. Because I just changed the whole question. Otherwise, it would have been 4 plus 60, square root of 64, which would have been 8. We could have found the 2 answers, okay? So boring. This is more fun. No, you can't. Sorry, you can't. Just change the question. Okay, so not possible. So there's no x-intercepts. If we graph that new equation, there's no x-intercepts with that graph. Because it's imaginary. When you square root a negative, it's an imaginary. It's not real. Okay? So it's all related to the square root. If the square root, the number inside the square root, is above 0, is greater than 0, so your discriminant is greater than 0. Or if b squared minus 4ac, which is what is inside the square root, is greater than 0, you're going to have 2 x-intercepts, 2 solutions. Okay? Because b squared minus 4ac is the radicand. It's what's inside the square root. So if whatever's inside the square root is greater than 0, you're going to have 2 solutions, the plus or minus versions. If the b squared minus 4ac, your radicand, is equal to 0, then you only have 1 solution. Because you're left with a number plus or minus root 0 over a number. And square root of 0 is just 0. So we're just left with the number over a number. 1 answer. There is no plus or minus. I don't know if you want to write that down. That's gibberish. Okay. And then last, if b squared minus 4ac is negative or less than 0, then there's no solution. Okay. So we have 2 x-intercepts if it's positive, or 2 solutions, 2 zeros. If it's equal to 0, we have how many? 1. And if it's negative, we have no x-intercepts, 0. Oops. Okay, so what b squared minus 4ac, its name is called the discriminant. Because it discriminates. Right? It's going to discriminate and tell you whether you're going to have 0, 1, or 2 x-intercepts. Okay, turn the page. I need to quickly get this done. It wouldn't have taken us so long if we didn't listen to all those songs. I'm blaming you. I had no part in that. Okay, so If a question is asking, determine the nature of the roots, what you really need to do is find the discriminant and tell me if there's 0, 1, or 2 x-intercepts. So instead of doing the whole quadratic formula, all we need to do is figure out what is the radicand. What is b squared minus 4ac? If I know what that is, then I don't need to solve the whole quadratic formula. I could tell you if there's 0, 1, or 2 x-intercepts. In this case, b is negative 30 squared minus 4 times a times c. What does that equal? Plug that in. Zero. So therefore, how many roots are there? One root. One solution. One x-intercept. Let's try it again. Tell me how many roots are there for the next one. What did that give you? Negative 31? No? Yeah? 3 squared is 9. 9 minus 40? Negative 31. So therefore, how many roots? 0 roots. No x-intercepts. Determine the value of k for which the equation x squared plus kx plus 16 has equal roots. Okay, if they're the equal or the same, it's saying one x-intercept. It's the same thing as saying one root, if they're both the same. In the quadratic, like x minus 3 times x minus 3. They both have an x-intercept of 3, one x-intercept. Okay, so how would you solve this? Where could we start? We know b squared minus 4ac equals what if there's one x-intercept? 0. Good. Okay, what's my b? K squared, k is b, minus 4 times, what's a? 1, and what's c? 16 equals 0. 4 times 16, 364. K squared minus 64 equals 0. Then what? You could, if we're solving a quadratic, what do we usually do if we solve a quadratic? Now this one you have two options. We could either factor. Can that factor? To what? X minus 8 times x plus 8, which gives you x equals, okay, not x, k. K equals plus or minus 8. Because of the form, like there's no k, you could have also solved this one by adding 64 to the other side and then square rooting both sides. But if you square root both sides, what do you have to remember? Plus or minus. Plus or minus. So either method works. So factoring only because there's no, it's just k squared equals a constant. Okay, two different real roots. So that's saying b squared minus 4ac is what? Greater than 0. So this is fun. We kind of never covered this before, but let's do it anyways. K squared minus 4 times 1 times 16 is greater than 0, or k squared minus 64 is greater than 0. Okay, inequalities. We're doing a whole unit on this later on. So let me briefly talk about this. Let's factor it. K minus 8 times k plus 8 has to be equal or greater than 0. That's factored for. So our critical values, where the sign changes, would be 8 and negative 8. Agreed? If I plug in an 8, it's going to give me a 0. So something above 8 is either going to be positive or negative. So that's where our zeros are. So let's choose -9. We're going to pick a number. If I plug -9 into this equation, will it come out positive or negative? Well, let's check. -9 minus 8, what will that be? Positive or negative? Negative. And a -9 plus 8 would give you a negative. Two negatives multiplied together would be positive. So we want when it's positive. So that's positive there. If I plug in, pick a number between -8 and 8, let's try 0. 0 minus 8 gives you what? Negative. 0 plus 8 is a positive. So the product here would be negative. So it's positive here, negative here, and this will be positive because it's a quadratic. Okay, let's check. This is supposed to be plus not 8. So positive 9 minus 8 is a positive. 9 plus 8 is a positive. The product would be positive. Okay, so our solution is when k is either less than -8 or greater than 8. What? Okay. So, our solution, think of it this way. If I actually rearrange the equation to x squared is greater than 64, add 64, or k, sorry, not x, k. So what numbers would make this greater than 64? Another way to think about it, this way, instead of doing all this, okay? If I put in a 0, would 0 be greater than 64? No. Okay, we know our critical values are plus or minus 8. So when it's 9, would 9 squared be greater? Yeah, so when it's above 8, when k is above 8, it's going to be greater than 64. Or if I plug in -9, -9 squared, would that be bigger than 64? Yes, when you square a negative, it becomes positive. So when k is less than -8 and greater than 8, would be the solution. Okay? Tough. This is really tough. Okay? Same idea. The last one, when we have no real roots, b squared minus 4ac has to be less than 0. Or, remember 4ac was equal to 64? So when is b squared minus 64 less than 0? Or, when is b squared? Add 64 to the other side. When is b squared less than 64? So on the number line, the critical values are -8 and 8, because that's where it equals, where both, right, -8 squared equals 64 and 8 squared equals 64. So where would it be? It'd be the numbers in between. Would you agree like -7 squared is less than 64? Or with +7 squared, would that be less than 64? Yeah, it's just in between these two numbers. So our no real roots would be when k is less than 8 and greater than -8. We will spend like a whole unit on this kind of stuff here. Well, not a whole unit, part of a unit. Okay. All right, that was fun. Yeah? No? Long. Including video.